Gather round, everyone, and let me tell you a story of a land called Endyre. A land full of creatures of all sizes, some big, some small, and some with some very questionable morals. This is a Minecraft server I've been a part of recently, and I want to share the story and my experiences with all you guys. I'll be elaborating on some of the characters and locations in future videos, but without further ado, let's get into it. I wasn't here for a large portion of the lore, but with some help from the other members, I was able to sort of piece together a lot of the story. So, the player characters, we'll call them the gang for now, receive news of some suspicious frames being set up. They locate two of them and find research notes written by a guy named Felrin. He mentions his group's frequent kidnapping of individuals for some experiments with some strange kind of like portal or rift. They made the portals and made them indestructible, with Felrin even sacrificing many of his body parts. And this is where we introduce the Snow Elves and the Elven Court. First off, there's a snowy cold area of Endyre, the setting for the SMP, called the Brim. The Brim houses wraiths and frost giants, which we'll get to in a future video, and our lovely Snow Elves. They're very scholarly and organized people with a basis in magic who live in small communities categorized by their magic school. The main governmental power of the Snow Elves is the Elven Court, a mysterious kinda like government or like senate situated miles away from all of the elven villages. Snow Elf children are raised to fear the court and its powers, which leads them to be very law-abiding, fearing the worst punishment should they break a rule, even on accident. Snow Elves are often very isolated from other races, sending travelers on their way as quickly as possible and keeping their children away from strangers. As such, any elves that leave their villages usually continue their life of isolation and study magic. So it's safe to say that the Elven Court is pretty strong. Sylvir, played by our lovely server owner Chaparoo, is a Snow Elf himself, and while I don't know too much about his backstory, I'm aware that he at least used to lead the Snow Elf's average life of isolation. Another one of our important characters is Ellie, a Scalekin scientist and scholar, which is pretty rare, something I'll surely touch upon sometime later. Has become pretty close to Sylvir recently, but at this point I think they were just like acquaintances or something. Sylvir tells Ellie that a section of a secret elven court, the elven court I just explained, could be behind all this, but they're overheard and the gang goes bonkers. Due to this, Sylvir thinks it might be best for him to isolate himself for a while, with some of the gang visiting him to either try to get more info out of him or just make sure he's alright. Meanwhile, Ellie and a few others set up the Brim research station to find out more about the court and a recent disappearance in the Brim, a frost giant and close friend of Sylvir named Bree. In the following events, the gang almost catches Felrin, and Sylvir tells a few trusted characters that the court is dangerous. Felrin's journal reveals that he managed to activate something by placing his eye in the portal frames. The gang then finds some prison cells with Bree's journal detailing her time there and her escape attempts. When the gang goes to tell Sylvir all this, Bree shows up and reveals her successful escape. Sylvir provides Ellie the means to research further under the promise of secrecy, considering how close the court's come to taking Sylvir into custody. The gang then comes across the town Sylvir grew up in, where they find detailed accounts of each race and their histories, which helped a lot when writing this video's script, as well as some of the inner workings of the court. They're attacked by a bunch of monsters and a strange figure upon leaving, however. The gang then goes back to the research center, and Ellie tells everyone they're in danger knowing the faces of the court, which is classified information. They all decide to stay, but not tell Sylvir because of his apprehension at being evolved, and already lackluster status with the court. Later, some weird sounds and quakes come from the Brim, and the gang goes to investigate. They find a tower with Felrin at the top, who reveals he's something called a Void Elf, which we don't know much about at the moment. Apparently they're some kind of highly dangerous and powerful section of the court, working under the Void Elf leader, Endyre. They're working to bring about something called the Merge, which, when questioned about it, Felrin says is some kind of attempt to restart the world. A little bit like the story Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, actually. A Templar by the name of Router comes forward to say that his race, which are quite old and advanced, has sealed off the rift and the dimension behind it centuries ago. Felrin also revealed that Ellie's mother was one of the test subjects, and scarred Felrin's face before being thrown into the rift and torn apart. Endyre then rudely interrupts by unleashing a bunch of new, never-before-seen monsters. He comments after they're defeated, saying they need fine-tuning. After this, Ellie lets Sylvir in on some of the stuff that's been going on and shows him the research station, but withholds certain information unless he wants to know it. Router also asks Sylvir about lessons in knowledge and power to aid in stopping the court, which Sylvir agrees to. This portion of the Brim arc then ends with Ellie telling Sylvir that she doesn't concern herself with the others' choices, only her own intent to help, and says Sylvir's path from here on out is his choice. After this point, I'm a little unclear on the details, but I know that another one of the frames is excavated, and Felrin's found and captured, as well as a prison and research facility being found under, like, the capital of Endyre called Centris. There they find this guy named Tegan, who they take for interrogation, and who Bree literally beheads. Like, what? So there's a lot of cool stuff coming up on RNG, and I'm super excited to explore upcoming events with all of you. So subscribe. Now, I want to get into my character, Hannah Jordan, aka Shoot Kapow. Shoot is a human from an unnamed village by the sea. Her life was going just swimmingly until a tragic accident at 10 years old. She was out swimming with her best friend Moko when she was grabbed by an unknown sea creature and dragged down into the ocean. Moko, who was a little bit older and quite a bit stronger than Shoot at that time, managed to loosen the creature's grip enough to get her out, but Shoot very nearly drowned. Since then, she's had severe PTSD and can't stand to be close to any kind of deep body of water. This did, of course, haunt her for a long time to come as she lived on the coast. In the following years, she became a red mage, as you can see by my clothing here, after a brief spell in the village's guard, where she made quite an impressive bowshot that earned her the nickname she now uses, as well as picking up literature. She enjoys reading and writing poetry, as well as researching magic in the world around her, and likes novels. Once she came of age, Shoot had to make a choice. She'd lived her whole life in this village, and everyone she knew and loved was here, but she just couldn't live her life by the ocean. Moko had been helping her cope with the trauma, but she just couldn't stand waking up every morning and seeing the sea outside. And so, Shoot made the most difficult choice of her life, and struck out on a journey from her village to find new land to settle on. I'll probably release a new video on Shoot's 5-year journey after this, once I've actually thought of that part, but I will say that she made some enemies. Her journeys made her stronger, but it seems that she may never be the person she once was before that fateful day. Shoot then came across the lands surrounding Centris and settled down in the Jade, a vibrant region full of plains and forests. She explored the area a bit, meeting individuals like Ellie and Bizo, a golem, which we will of course talk about at a later date, and Dean, a dwarf. But perhaps her most faithful encounter was her interaction with the wraith Sean. She was out farming one night when she noticed a mysterious figure atop a tree. She greeted him and invited him in, where they introduced themselves and Shoot talked a bit about her past, as well as Sean mentioning how few humans there were in the area. She was unaware at this point that Sean was a wraith, but when she mentioned the run-ins with some undesirable figures in her past, Sean questioned her about what she thought about death and what would happen if she died. Shoot was kinda naive and didn't think too much about it, but Sean explained that he was a wraith. He offered an alliance, using protection as a potential motive for Shoot, which just quite happens to be what she was interested in. You see, Shoot Kapow is a very codependent character. She really likes to be around other people and have friends to, you know, talk to and hang out with and sort of, you know, be protected by. So Sean's proposition here was quite desirable. Before he left, Sean said, "Your eyes are more vivid than most humans. Maybe you'll be different." Shoot went around talking to people about Sean, as he had mentioned that he didn't have the best reputation. She got some mixed reviews, so to speak, with some saying he was dangerous, even to the point where he might be able to possess her. But Ellie said that he was likely not powerful enough for that, and probably wanted to learn more about her. A few days later, Shoot accepted Sean's proposition, and he explained to her that there had been some events going on recently. He asked her what she would be willing to give up to save her most treasured possession. On this note, Sean left Shoot standing there confused, and perhaps a little scared. If you were forced to sacrifice something to save what was closest to you, how far would you be willing to go?